You're wanting a simple recipe using 100% freshly milled wheat. What is the one recipe that I always recommend? And that is my simple yeast bread loaf recipe, perfect for beginners. And today I'm actually going to be showing you how to make it in this beautiful Ankarsrum mixer, aka Miss Annika. Hey y'all, welcome back to Grains and Grit. My name is Felicia, and on this channel I teach you all about real whole grains, all from a biblical perspective. I teach you how and why to be milling your own grains, baking this delicious bread, and more. Okay, so it's actually been a couple years since I've done a video on my simple yeast bread loaf recipe. This is the same recipe that I actually have in my own cookbook, link in the description box below. Shameless plug, I know. But this is actually my ride or die, my recipe that I recommend all the beginners start with. And good news is that y'all, I'm a busy mom, homeschooling mom, large family. I need things to be simple. And this bread recipe is a simple recipe that makes using 100% freshly milled wheat a little bit less intimidating. Now I'm using it in the today, the Ankarsrum Mixer, because the Ankarsrum Mixer has a little bit of a learning curve. So do know that if you're looking for this recipe on how I use it in my Bosch Universal Mixer Plus, same as the Nutrimill Artiste, that is that video up here. I'll also link it down below. I've also shown this recipe in the Zacme mixer as well. So that typical KitchenAid-like stand mixer, I'll link that up here and down in the description box below if you're interested in that. But otherwise, the Ank has a bit of a learning curve, and so that's why I wanted a dedicated video using this recipe. So if you've got it and it's frustrating to you because you can't figure it out, this is definitely the video for you. And also learning how to make this recipe because I slow it down and walk you through it. So without further ado, let's get started and make some delicious bread. Okay, so first step is the Autolyse, however you say it, step. So in case you're wondering what this random thing is here, this is just my light. This is not part of the Ankarsrum mixer. So this is actually pretty simple. We have 3 3/4 cups of warm water. So the warm water that I say to use is like you're giving a baby a bath. That's it. So we just go ahead and put that here in the bowl. And then we have 2 1/4 tablespoons of yeast. Yes, tablespoons, 2 1/4 tablespoons of yeast. I like to use instant yeast because this allows where I don't have to activate it and it's just a little bit faster. You can use active dry yeast if you want. But I have that in here, and then I add 2 cups of my flour. Now again, I'm using hard white wheat flour. People ask me all the time, why don't I offer this in grams? It is because that ultimately, this is just, frankly, it's how I learned it. I don't weigh my flour or anything. This is how I learned it because ultimately I teach you how to read the dough, which is absolutely crucial when using freshly milled wheat, because the amount of flour that this recipe can take, it can literally vary day by day based on if it's the humidity, the type of wheat that you're using, so on and so forth. So the one difference between this and my Bosch is whenever I do this process, usually in my Bosch or Artiste, I have the dough hooks in here and use it to mix. I find that the dough roller here does not do as well in really dissolving all this. So I like to take a little whisk to it. Good news is there's no center draft thingy, center hole or whatever you want to call it in the middle column, so it's not blocking me. I can easily whisk this, and this is just a personal preference. I know it's another dish, but to wash. But frankly, the roller just doesn't mix this up. So all that you do is you just really whisk that together, make sure things are pretty much mostly dissolved, and then we let this rest for 15 minutes. And this is gonna get active and bubbly. If you have a cold house, you may wanna do about 20 minutes. For me, it's now June in Florida. The house is, you know, mid 70s or so, upper 70s. So this is gonna be just fine. And I love this cover. It fits greatly. It keeps out all the bugs that we have. And then just 15 minutes for me, and I'll see you back here when that's done. In the meantime, I like to go ahead and measure out my oil and my honey, get the rest of my flour milled if I need to do that. and go ahead and just set everything up, get the salt. All right, so 15 minutes is up. If it goes longer than that, say you got distracted, busy, whatever, you know, and it's 20, 25 minutes, no big deal. But you may not be able to see being a 2D format, but this has gotten more bubbly. It has risen a little bit. Beautiful. This is also a great way to test to make sure your yeast is good. So at this point, if you see no bubbly action, no rising whatsoever, like it looks exactly the way as it did when you started, I would toss it out because that probably means that your yeast is bad. Okay, so 2 here, very easy. We're going to add our 3 1/4 teaspoon of salt. I like to use Redmond salt. Either way, just use a good salt. You shouldn't be using white salt. And then we're gonna add our 1/2 cup of oil and 1/2 cup of honey to this. Now, fun fact, science, you can measure both your oil and honey in the same container and it actually be accurate. You can't do that with everything. It's a science thing. You can Google it. Now, a note about the oil and the honey. I get asked if you can omit the honey. Absolutely. I'm usually asked this by diabetics. And yes, if you want to, you can omit the honey. Also, honey is like really expensive. And there have definitely been times I just couldn't afford honey. And so I left it out. The bread turns out just fine. I do find that honey just softens it a little bit. And of course gives it a very nice flavor, more like a honey wheat flavor, but the bread is just fine, completely omitting the honey. Or even if you want to, use less honey, you don't need to adjust anything else. A note about the oil, I do prefer using extra virgin olive oil or avocado oil. Any type of oil that you prefer. I wouldn't use a coconut oil because even a extra virgin coconut oil, I find typically still leads to a coconut type flavor. If you love it, great, use it. Obviously just make sure it is melted before putting it in. So that's what you want to use here, the oil, 1/2 cup of oil, 1/2 cup of honey, and we have that added. And now we start adding in our flour. Now this is the most important part. We are using 100% freshly milled wheat. This means you do not want to just dump it all in. Okay, do not just dump in 9 cups of flour. You may need more, you may need less. I call for 9 to 9.5 cups of flour in my recipe. You may need less than that. You may need more than that. I'm gonna teach you how to read the dough. So before we do that though, we're gonna go ahead and add in our scraper here with our Ankarsrum. And then we are doing our roller. I know that it does come with a dough hook. I have not used it yet. They added that later after they designed the Ankarsrum, I think because people were like, I want the dough hook. That was not the original design. The original design was this roller. And the purpose of this roller is it's more of a, almost like you're kneading it by hand yourself. I think that's what it's trying to mimic. So I do like to set it where it's just a little bit, so this is where it is naturally without tightening it all the way up against the bowl. I do like to come in on this regular normal batch. It just depends on the size, how many batches you're doing. My big mama batch, I probably would want to come in more. You can adjust this, but usually I'm about 1.5 to 2 inches away from here. But you may adjust that later and I'll teach you how. So this is the biggest learning curve with the Ank, is the fact that it's not a typical dough hook, it's this rolling, and what makes it a little bit more frustrating for people starting out because of figuring out how much dough to add. So we've already added 2 cups of flour in. I'm gonna start adding more. So what I like to do is I actually like to keep this on the lowest speed and then turn it on and start adding. So we're probably gonna add up to a total of 6 cups of flour, so that includes the 2 cups in here. So we're gonna add a total of 4 cups more. And then I stop measuring and I just add enough flour until it gets it to where I want it to get to, okay? That's just a safety where I like to keep it to prevent me from adding too much flour. So we're gonna turn it on our lowest setting. Don't turn it on all the way. I also don't add, just add in the 4 extra cups of flour right away because this has no guard and I found that flour was coming out. So that's why with the Ank, I add a little bit at a time. So it's on the lowest speed. We're gonna go ahead and just turn it on and just slowly start adding in flour. So we've already had 2, so this is 3 and 4, 5, And now we have 6 total, and we're gonna let that come in. And you may just wanna do this with your roller here to start incorporating, making sure all of this is mixed in. And once all of this is mixed in well, that's when I start adding more flour a little bit at a time, like basically a quarter to half a cup at a time. But you just wanna make sure this is all ready. You can even just not set this yet and just kind of do this manually until all of that flour gets incorporated in, and then you can set it. So one thing I love about the Ank is how quiet it is compared to like the Bosch Universal Mixer Plus or the Nutrimill Artiste, because I'm actually able to talk over it pretty much. Okay, so that looks pretty good. I'm gonna set it to about here, again, about 1.5 to 2 inches away from the side of the bowl. I may have to adjust that. And now we're gonna start adding, I'm gonna turn that off so you can hear me better, because here's the key, the difference between the Ank and your other typical stand mixers is usually I would say you're looking to add enough flour until it starts pulling off the sides of the bowl. We're not looking at the sides of the bowl, we're looking at the roller. You're gonna look at how it starts pulling away from the roller and it actually forming a more a better dough that would actually, wants to stay together more. That is the biggest difference I've learned with the Ank and the other mixers. So don't pay attention to the side, pay attention to the roller, and let's start adding. And I'm gonna increase this up to about a 2 speed. Okay, so let's add in a little bit more here, and just to help it mix in, you're just gonna need to, move it in like this. And I like to wait until most of that flour is already very incorporated in before adding more. Now, I've done this a million times. I already know I'm gonna need more, so I'm gonna keep adding it. And again, I'm not paying attention to, oh no, I've added 10 cups of flour. I'm not paying attention to that anymore. I literally stopped measuring. Okay. Now, you are also looking for it coming off the sides of the bowl, because that's indicating that it is forming more of a dough ball. But one of the keys is the roller, and you'll start seeing in a bit, because this is still, let me turn this off. This is still a gloopy mess, not a dough ball. Okay. And then some more. I'm gonna turn up the speed just a little bit, just to the next one. We're now on speed 3. Okay, so you see it's starting to pull away from the roller and starting to kind of pull away from the bowl, but not quite. It's still not forming into a dough ball. All right, so start doing here. And then kind of each time I mix it, I'm gonna speed it up again. We're now on a 4. Okay, gonna keep going. And if you're just unsure, like, did I add enough flour? Just wait, 10, 15 seconds, observe the dough, because sometimes it starts coming together, but then it starts going back out. All right, you see right there in the center, nothing is coming away from that. Nothing is really coming away from the roller. So we're gonna still keep adding. And if you notice, I'm adding more towards to the roller, but bottom line is just get everything incorporated. Okay. All right, that is starting to look good. You see we're starting to notice the bottom of the bowl right there next to the roller. That's what we're looking for. I'm going to, and the dough is coming off a good like inch or so from the sides of the bowl up here where it's next to the scraper. And it's starting to form more of that dough ball. There still is space between the roller. You can still see the bottom of the mixer with the roller right there. I'm gonna add just a little bit more, because from experience, I do like to see a little bit more space and a little bit more of the bottom of the bowl. All right, that is looking good. That is starting to really come together as a nice dough ball here. Okay, let me give y'all a different angle. So you can see from this side of the bowl how much space it's coming off. That's what I'm looking for, as well as right in there. I can't quite see the bottom of it, but it is coming off just a little bit. It is coming way more off the sides of the bowl, but it's still looking quite wet and sticky. I'm gonna add just a little bit more. But overall, you can see it's coming together and not looking like a big goopy mess, basically. Okay, that is looking good. I'm seeing good spacing in between the roller and that dough. All right, I have now sped this up to a 5. That's kind of a good speed, like that 5th marker that I see. This is looking pretty good. It's still, let me see. That is still looking pretty good because, again, it's forming more of a dough. I started to see that spacing, but you may start seeing it come back to that dough roller. At this point, if it's looking like it's forming more of a dough, that spacing is looking pretty good. I'm now gonna start my kneading, and this has a wonderful timer on it. And we're gonna set it for a 9-minute knead and then check the dough. So here's the thing while it kneads, is I prefer to add less flour right now than more, because if I add too much flour, I can't take it out and the bread can be too dense. So right now it's still looking to me like it's still gonna be slightly more sticky than I like it. But at the end of kneading, I'm looking for a smooth ball of dough and one that is slightly tacky. If it's still too sticky, and I'll show you then if it turns out that way, if it's still too sticky, we can always add in a little bit more flour. I just like to dust my hands lightly with flour and kind of be working that into the dough until it feels like what I'm going for. But right now we're gonna go ahead and knead this. This is looking good. I don't want to run the risk of adding too much flour. So as long as it's coming together as more of a dough ball, even though it's obviously not gonna look smooth and things like that, we do need to knead it. We're gonna stop adding flour and I'll see you back in 9 minutes. Okay, we are about halfway through the kneading process and I wanted to show you this to let you know, don't freak out. So I'm now hearing where it sounds like the mixer is struggling. You're hearing this thumping sound. That is normal, it's fine, it's doing just fine. It just means that dough, it's getting better, it's getting smoother, it's forming more of a dough and not just sloshing around in the bowl. So you may kind of hear that bit of a thumping. I don't know if it's coming across on video, but that is normal. And you see like this is kind of moving a bit as well. You can loosen that up if it's just looking too weird, but otherwise this is fine. We're about halfway through. We are going to pause it right here to actually talk about today's sponsor, which is 4 Generations Organic Farms. I love 4 Generations Organic Farms. They are my go-to farms for my hard red and hard white wheat. They are the easiest wheats, I think, that are out there for beginners. Their Butler's Gold is a hard red and their Stardust is their hard white. Those are the 2 that I recommend because they're just, frankly, they're delicious and they are easy wheats to work with, especially when using freshly milled wheat. So bottom line with 4 Generations Organic Farms, they are located in the great state of Oklahoma and they have been farmers for, you guessed it, 4 generations. They are organic farmers who are also regenerative farmers, meaning that they're taking care of their soil, which means the more nutrient dense the soil is, the better nutrient dense your wheat is. They are excellent people, a wonderful company to support. And the beauty of this is that the wheat berries you order online and they show up to your house. They are clean wheat berries. They usually have oxygen absorbers with them and their buckets come sealed with oxygen absorbers. So they're just ready to go straight to my shed to be stored for a very long time. I'm actually using their Stardust wheat in this recipe today. And so be sure to check them out. Just go to grainsandgrit.com/4generations. Use this coupon here for 10% off your first order. And thank you so much to 4 Generations for sponsoring today's video and for giving us some excellent wheat to work with. Okay, and we are done, 9 minutes, and this is what I'm looking for. We have a nice stretchy dough and it is slightly tacky. So let's put this out on the counter so you can actually see what it looks like. All right, and I'm hoping the lighting is good because on my camera, it's not looking so great and I'm doing all the things right, but okay. All right, so how the dough feels. It is soft. You can see that it is nice, beautiful, stretchy, not breaking, but It is slightly, ever so slightly tacky. You will have a little bit here, but it's not crazy sticky. So I can move my fingers away, have a little bit like a little bit of dough in my hand, but I can still work with this dough. If it's like crazy sticky, lightly dust your hands and then work with it. And then just kind of do, you know, a light kneading, things like this, working that flour into the dough. So that way you can shape it. So now we're up to shaping it. And these are my favorite bread pans ever. Like, I did a bread pan, all about bread pan video, and I said that I haven't found my perfect bread pan, and then Nutrimill came out with these, and I have found my perfect bread pan. These are enameled cast iron bread pans, beautiful, from Nutrimill. I will link these below, but they're the perfect size for my loaves. It bakes the bread beautifully because I do find like a cast iron, that stone type baking, literally, it just does the perfect thing. Now from here, I already know that this makes roughly about 3 loaves of bread. Now you can weigh these. And in fact, I'll go ahead and do that for you. So you definitely want one of these scrapers because they are awesome. And sometimes if I'm in a hurry, I don't weigh them because I have experience now where I can eyeball them to get roughly the same size, but you do want roughly the same size. And I do it pounds and ounces. So this is 1 pound, 13 ounces, 1 pound, 11 ounces. And this can vary based on how much dough you created. 1 pound, 11 ounces. So let's take a little bit from the larger one, divide it in half. I'm not going for perfection, but all roughly the same size. So now we're at 111, 111, and 112. That's fine. Man, I'm good. I love it whenever it turns out that way. Okay, so we have roughly the same size. We set 2 aside, work on 1. And if you cut into the dough, you may notice that it gets stickier. That's normal. So just, again, I keep flour here. I just lightly dust my hands. You can do some water, oil, or even a little bit of oil, whichever one you prefer. But bottom line, soft dough. I don't bother with window pane, although mine is a pretty good window pane, but I'm looking for a soft dough, one that's easily stretchable, and honestly, it just feels good. It feels like a good dough. So we take this. This is also the second most important part when baking bread with freshly milled wheat, because it's not just the recipe, the flour you're using, it's also the technique in the folding. Because if your bread falls, if it goes out instead of up, if you have a hole in the middle of the bread, sometimes, or the fact that it doesn't rise well, all of these can be contributed to shaping issues. So very simple. Love these little rolling pins. I will link this one down below. You can get them so many places. It's called a pastry roller. So if you want to search for it, it's called a pastry roller. And basically I just roll it out, and if it's sticking to your counter, again, I just have a scraper, so long as it's not crazy sticking. If so, just add a little bit of flour. But I basically just kind of roll it out to a rough rectangle shape. So that's about 1 inch thick. All right, and then here we go out just a little bit, roll over about that 2/3 way mark. And then the other side, we just take it out, pull it out just a little bit, roll it over. And now we roll it like a sleeping bag. So pull it out a little bit, tuck under tightly, roll out, tuck, roll out, tuck, roll out, tuck, roll out, tuck. And again, it may start to get a little sticky, that is, or tacky, I should say. Lightly dust the hands. Now we have this weird shape, and now we smooth out the edges. So I roll this over, tuck this over, take this, kind of tuck that under, and then we just tighten everything. You really want to tighten it all. So tight, 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 tuck, tuck, tight. I'm tucking underneath here, okay? Tuck, tuck, tuck. Any seams like this, you do not want, because that will rip the bread. So we're just smoothing that down. That looks good. You want a nice smooth on top, the ugly side on the bottom. Plop in your bread pan. Ta-da, set it aside. And now let's just do the other ones. And while I'm doing this, if you notice, I don't do any extra rises. And people ask me, Felicia, why don't you do, 2 rises, 3 rises? And the plain simple truth is, because I don't have to. The bread turns out beautifully and wonderful, and it's delicious without taking the extra time for all those different rises. And I found that it did the best with freshly milled wheat when I just did one rise. Whenever I would do more rises, it wouldn't necessarily rise the second and third times, and then my bread would be a little dense. So I just do this one rise. That's it. You want to do more than one rise? Go ahead. Go ahead, because all that really will do is it will change the flavor a little bit. And if that is your jam, if you care about that, if you want to do that, you go right on ahead, my friends. It ain't gonna hurt anything. That's just the biggest thing. People ask me all the time. I'm like, because I don't have to. And I'm a busy mom, y'all. I got a large family, homeschooling mama. I run this YouTube channel, all the business side with all of that. My husband being a paraplegic, I'm his caretaker. I am busy, y'all. So trust me. Less time, easy, keep it simple. Eating good real food, eating good bread with freshly milled doesn't have to be complicated or really time consuming. Okay, one thing I forgot to mention is make sure you do grease your bread pans, no matter what bread pan you use. I also recommend you grease these sides here, because if your bread rises too much and it goes over a little bit, you don't want it to stick on your edges either. So these are looking perfect. I'm now gonna put them on my oven, and I go ahead and preheat my oven 350 degrees Fahrenheit. And usually this is all nice and risen in about 35 or 40 minutes, y'all. No lie, it's awesome. So I'm gonna go put these on, and I'll see you back here then. Okay, so this has been about 35 minutes, maybe 40 minutes, but you can see how they're just like, I always look for about an inch above the pan, because the thing is you don't want to raise it till it looks like it's risen enough, because it's going to rise more while in the oven. So these are looking good. I can kind of push it here and it slightly come back, so kind of indent it and it come back. That means it's proofed well. So we're going to put this in the oven for 35 minutes, and this is a preheated 350 degree oven. Okay, and 35 minutes are up. And here we go with the beautiful loaves of bread. We have a nice, beautiful golden color over them. Okay, so now I like to let them sit in the pan for 10 minutes. This is kind of known as sweating. And what that does is it's help release the bread from the sides of the pan, but no more than 10 minutes, because otherwise that steam will then get the bread too wet, and you don't want wet bread because then it can mold sooner, so on and so forth. Okay, so here's more of a better image close-up of the bread. These are beautiful golden loaves. You can see how much they rose above the pan, higher than whenever it was actually doing the rising. So you can see that it came over just a little bit here on the pan. That's totally fine. It's gonna give an interesting shape, but I'm okay with that because this is for my family and it looks good, but that's also why we grease these rims here. So I'll see you back in about 10 minutes to take these out. Okay, so it has been 10 minutes and now we are ready to take these out. And now the true test to see if we greased our pans well, how it all turned out. They should slide out well if you grease them properly. There's this and that one. These are coming out beautifully. Okay, there we go. And then last one here. Okay, there we go. Okay, y'all, check that out. That right there is a beautiful, hot, very hot loaf. So what I like to do is completely cool them down actually on their sides. And the reason for the sides is so gravity doesn't take control, because if you do it this way, gravity can smush it down just a little bit. So one extra step to keep it from being dense. And then we cover this up because I'm in Florida where we have a ton of gnats and bugs and flies and all of that. And we let it completely cool down. But we're gonna completely cool down before slicing. The reason why you wanna completely cool it down before slicing it is because things are still baking on the inside and you want to make sure that it's not gummy or things like that. It's also gonna stay together better. So if I was to slice this now, which is totally fine if you do, I've done it before, but it's not gonna hold its shape as well. It's still delicious. The butter will melt on it. So that's why you gotta wait for it to cool down. And let's actually see one that has been cooled down and something to show y'all that I've recently gotten to help you slice the bread. So move this out of the way and let me show you something cool. So this is already a loaf that we've already partially used, as you can see. And this is a cool device. And the reason I'm showing it to y'all is because I quickly made a reel of this the other day, and it was actually very popular. It was one that I threw together. So this is actually a bread slicer guider. So what it is it comes where you can easily do it this way. Basically, it's just however thick your bread is. So this can actually come in a little bit more like this. And then you have this guide here that you can, basically it just slides in to wherever your bread is. It's just to hold that bread. If I can get this in here, I'm doing this backwards, so it's a little hard. So that just goes in there like this to kind of hold the bread. And then you can now get perfect slices of bread. And this thing here, it catches the crumbs here at the bottom. So again, I was kind of surprised at how popular, how many people wanted this. So I'm just gonna kind of slice it here and we're just gonna guide this down. This is perfect if you have kids. I've been doing this for years, so I know how to slice bread evenly, but it did take me a while to do that. And so now this allows you to get perfectly sliced bread, as you can see here. So this one was the first one that was already wonky. So this one is, it's perfectly even slices to do this type of bread. And now they're all like, you know, all uniform slices, and you don't have wonky slices. So excellent for kids to be able to do this themselves, and also for you as a beginner to start off slicing nice, pretty even slices. And of course, if you wanted to like double them, you know, you could do that. But pretty cool. And I think honestly, that is like a perfect size for a sandwich, you know, toast, things like that. All right, there you go, guys. We made bread with the Ank mixer. So again, I know that this is kind of a learning curve. It definitely took me a little bit of time to figure it out in my Ank, despite my over a decade experience and several years experience using the Bosch Universal Mixer Plus and then the Nutrimill Artiste. I do love this mixer. Let me know in the comments below if you have the Ank. How do you like her? Things like that. Do you know I have made my chocolate chip cookies? I have made other recipes, and she handles them beautifully. She's also able to handle my big mama batch as well as smaller batches. And so she's a great mixer. And this is also, again, my simple yeast bread loaf recipe, my ride or die, my go-to recipe. And if you're wanting to know how to make the best rolls you will ever have in your life with 100% fresh milled wheat, I actually have two of them for you. Good news, same recipe. But this one up here is actually using Corazon or kamut, an ancient grain. And then this one right here is using these typical modern grains. Same recipe, shows you how to make really good rolls. So hopefully this video was helpful for y'all. Links in the description box below for everything. And as always, I hope y'all have an excellent, wonderful day, and I'll see you next week. Bye.